Hello, Embers. Thanks so much for joining us again today. I'd just like to take a minute here at the beginning of the episode to let you know that the audio quality is going to be a little bit less than our normal standard on this episode. We had some issues during production, but I hope the conversation is still valuable, and thank you so much for listening. Hello, Embers. Welcome back to Ember Exchange. I am a host of the show, Dylan.
And I'm Jill.
And I'm Heidi.
Thanks so much for joining us again today on this, our 11th episode. Guys, we made it over 10 episodes.
Wow.
Isn't that exciting?
That's very exciting.
Our topic for today is going to be on boycotts. This is something that I think gets a lot of attention, or at least viral boycotts do and have in recent years. And so we'd like to take a bit to look at them and see, are they valuable? Do we encourage or discourage participation in them? And what is a bit of the biblical perspective? And then at the end, we'll bring the opposite of boycotts. I think I would define it. Some brands that we actually do like, and we're not sponsored by any of them. We like the brands, and we'd like to kind of just share some of the things that we do like when we look at a company, not just in terms of their product, but also their company values. So without further ado, let's stoke some conversation.
Let's do it.
Okay, so boycotts. First off, we should probably define what is even a boycott. I think a lot of people have a picture in their minds, either positive or negative. It certainly has connotations, but just like a benevolent definition of what a boycott is. And from what I found, that is a deliberate and organized effort by a group of individuals or organizations to withhold their support or patronage from a particular company, product, or service. I thought that also the word boycott was kind of funny. And like, is there also such thing as a girl cot? I don't think so. Based on a little bit of the history of it. So Jill, would you be willing to share a little bit of the history of boycott and boycotts?
Yeah, so it actually started during the Irish Land War. Boycott, it is in fact the term coined after a gentleman named Captain Charles Cunningham Boycott. He was a British land agent in County Mayo, Ireland.
Okay.
And so what happened was the Irish Land League organized a campaign of social and economic ostracism against this Captain Boycott to protest his refusal to reduce rents for struggling tenants. And so the Land League refused to work for, buy from, or have dealings with boycott, just like you just said in the actual dictionary definition of boycott. Basically, they did all of those things. And so then the term boycott was popularized in the international press to describe this coordinated effort. And so in the news outlets, they were just saying boycott.
His name became essentially a verb.
Yeah, right. Referring to Captain Boycott. But it helped describe this effort to isolate and punish the individual, Captain Boycott, for their actions and policies.
Okay. For the purpose of what? So that's, I think, the next piece. We know what a boycott is. Why would somebody wish to do such a thing or participate in a boycott?
Well, right, it's kind of an expression of disapproval or opposition to someone's policies or maybe what they practice or value.
Okay.
Yeah, in the current culture, I kind of think of it as like voting with your dollar.
Yeah. That's a good summary.
Much more economic pressure.
Yep.
Or motive.
What this brings to mind for me is there's kind of two phenomena, I would say, that are popular. So boycotts being one, and we'll talk about some examples of some popular ones or viral ones that have showed up recently. But the other thing that's really big that individuals like us, right, we're unabashedly conservatives and Christians. There's a lot of yelling in our space about cancel culture. Is there a difference between those two in your guys' mind, between a boycott and cancel culture? Are they both wrong? Is one okay and the other isn't? Or are they both okay? What do you guys think?
When I hear it initially, yes, I think that there is a difference. I guess in my brain, I would probably more distinctly go boycott is the voting with your dollar. It's putting like this economic pressure on an organization
Right.
or a larger group, right? Like a business. While when I hear cancel culture, I often more so immediately think of is attacking an individual to the point of if they share a different opinion with you, then they should be silenced. And they shouldn't be allowed to either hold that opinion, or if they do hold that opinion, they don't get to share it. And that's how in my brain I differentiate it more.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess when I was looking at the history of boycott, it was kind of interesting because like I almost went Captain Boycott was a part of cancel culture.
Yeah.
Because he was an individual guy that they didn't like his policies, right? And so they did this coordinated like isolation and punishment of him, even though it got coined after his name.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, boycott was effectively canceled, right?
Yeah.
But
yes. Use a modern phrase applied to an 1880 situation.
Yes. Well, also remembering it was an 1880 situation, so boycotting / canceling Mr. Boycott was the same thing as going after an organization.
So maybe to give a modern example.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, for example, is somebody who I probably disagree with on literally everything having to do with anything political. Would it be considered a boycott or cancel culture if people got together and said, we are not going to engage in any of the economic, business, consumer related things associated with Bill Gates? Is that cancel culture or is that a boycott?
I would put it in the boycott camp.
Okay.
Because I am not attacking him for the opinions he has or the things that he shares. And in fact, I'm not stopping him from doing any of those things anymore as an individual. He can use his freedom of speech as much as I can. But economically, I am not supporting the things that he would either benefit from directly or indirectly, nor am I hypothetically supporting with my dollar the things he supports because of his opinions, because that's what he's going to put his money towards.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that boycotts are monetary and cancellation is subscribers. The thing is,
or deplatforming would be another way, I
right.
think, if I were to stick a word in there. It's
Yeah.
where somebody has a voice and you try to take away their voice, which sometimes can have like economic ramifications. So you think like Gina Carano was canceled
right.
of the Mandalorian stuff, which means that she wasn't hired as an actress. So that's kind of economic, but also that's her platform. I don't know.
Right. And that's the thing, like YouTubers who that's their main source of income.
Yeah.
If they get canceled, then they're like kind of screwed.
Okay.
So
but
subs
like
are sort of economic in today's culture.
Like I would say YouTube is a part of cancel culture when they ban an individual because they're saying we don't like what you're saying, which has an economic effect. So they could say it's like, we're just boycotting that person. But truly, you're not. You are trying to affect their income stream, but you're trying to affect it because of an opinion you're trying to shut down or a voice that they want to be heard by.
But like for the Target example, I don't think people had an issue with Target the store. They had an issue with what Target was saying through the selling of all these LGBTQ products. So I don't really know. I kind of feel like the left cancels and the right boycotts, and they're both trying to accomplish the same thing by silencing the other's opinion and advocating for their own.
Okay.
But I see the distinction you're making. It's just hard because everything is so.
I mean, they're intertwined for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would say that it's a spectrum. Like it's not just this very uniform gradation between boycott and cancel culture, but I think that there's maybe a space where it is an overlap in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also the space where I'm going to say conservatives are justified in doing what it is that they're going to do, whether it be canceling a person or boycotting something. And liberals are not going to be justified in that, because that's, how I fall down on those issues.
Right.
Anyway, I just wanted to raise that as a point, because I think that a lot of people would come up, and if we said boycotts are great, and then we would get the reply, well, but you're so against cancel culture, boycotts are just cancel culture. And that might be unique to our contemporary moment as well, too, right? Where we talk the difference between Colonel, is it Captain or
Captain
Boy? He didn't have a YouTube channel where he was talking about, right? So I think some of that's an artifact of our present moment.
Yeah.
And whether we like it or not, I think these are both weapons that are used.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
And we'll get into whether we think they ought to be used.
Yeah.
Right.
And whether or not we use them ourselves.
Yeah.
But before we get to specifically our stuff, it would be interesting to we've already touched on some examples of modern boycotts. And then I would also be interested, if you do share one that you're particularly familiar with, whether or not you think it was effective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just based on your impression. And some of them I've gone and looked to see how actually effective it was. I haven't done that with all of these, but the couple that I'll bring up, it would be interesting to talk about. So, you guys, what in your recent memory, what are some boycotts that you're familiar with, or that you think are really important to think about?
Yeah, I think the most recent one that I can think of is Planet Fitness.
Okay.
Which then kind of bled into this LA Fitness, Anytime Fitness branch, because obviously in the gym space there are locker rooms, and we would be under the understanding that there's a women's locker room and a men's locker room.
You bigot, how dare you?
I know. And a transgender woman, so a man, was allowed to go into the women's locker room. And one morning, a woman was in there, and so was a little girl that has been reported to be approximately 12, 14 years old. And this guy was standing at the sink shaving. So she, the older woman, took a picture of him, approached him, and said, "Excuse me, I don't think it's appropriate for you to be in this locker room, nor should you be shaving. There's a little girl in here, and I don't feel safe with that." He, of course, was, "I'm allowed to be here. I can do this." And she was like, I'm not going to get into this, here and now. So she left. And she posted the picture, and she just said her stance was, as a woman that works out here, I wanted to inform my community that this was going on in their backyard. And then, of course, it just blew up. And Planet Fitness decided to revoke her membership permanently from all Planet Fitnesses from the next day moving forward, because she shared his face basically like on the internet, but he's allowed to be there.
Right. So just based on the letter of their policy, my understanding was they do not allow photography in the gym, especially in the locker rooms.
Yes.
But they do permit individuals such as this fella to choose their locker room of choice.
Yes.
And so based on the letter of the law, she was wrong and he was right, but that's disgusting and horrible and not correct, we would say.
Right.
Yes.
And so that led to a bunch of people then choosing not to cancel their...
Correct. People were saying, like, Planet Fitness is trying to cover this whole thing up because they're getting a bunch of negative press over it for good reason. And they're like, well, look at our policies. It says right here, you can identify however you want. And basically, if you go to the front desk and you say, if you were a member right now and tomorrow you walked in and you said, I identify as a woman, the front desk person could not do anything to prevent you from walking into the women's locker room.
That's horrible.
And so people started canceling in support of this woman and what she posted. And when they get the little box that asks, like, why are you canceling? They removed all sorts of options that said that it was because of this policy.
Sorry, Planet Fitness removed the options.
So then this other gentleman, his kind of also went viral. He came and he was like, hey, I'm canceling. And I'm canceling because this happened. So she had to go get a manager. And then the manager came and he was like, why are you canceling? It's like, this is the reason. And he was like, yeah, we can't put that as a reason.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So belligerence in their
Correct.
is
Yes. And
cool.
I read something that was like, it's a violation of their judgment-free policy.
Yeah.
I'm like, could
More
not
this eye roll.
have, yes, exactly, could not have rolled my eyes further back into my head.
Yeah.
In your opinion, then, based on having kind of tracked this, it sounds like, how successful do you think that boycott has been? It's been about a month.
While yes, they lost millions of dollars very, very quickly, my brain just kind of goes to like, when you're making billions, like, it's just like such a tiny dent.
Mhm.
Sure. Does it matter, or does it make a difference? I don't know.
Okay.
Do you think people in general would have such strong opinions about this and such strong reactions if Planet Fitness wouldn't have revoked the woman's membership?
That's a good question.
Because I think it's active discrimination to revoke her membership and say, we don't agree with your stance on this, and so therefore we are against them. Planet Fitness took their stance by revoking her membership.
Sure, they know that they can't legally revoke her membership, though, just because of her opinions, which is why her membership was permanently canceled for taking the photo.
Right. Okay.
So they have, I mean,
illegal.
They also, that's the thing with these big companies, is they've got a legal department that's their entire job, is to make sure that they are never liable for anything.
Mm-hmm. But if they would have just like let it sit and even messaged her privately and been like, we're so sorry you felt unsafe about this. This is our policy. You can choose what you want to do with that. And she would have been the one to cancel her membership because she didn't feel safe. Do you think this would have gone as far?
I think it would have gone a different way.
Yeah.
I think that the trans community would have threatened violence against Planet Fitness for not taking a stand against bigotry.
Okay. Got it. So they, in a way, were just kind of saving face because they're more afraid of the LGBTQ community's cancellation than the conservatives' boycott.
Yes, which is interesting because that often, at least in recent history, in my mind, is the case. That businesses are far more afraid of backlash from, I'm going to put a moratorium on the word woke for this conversation, because that is a word that has been beaten to death and no longer has any meaning, like racism and other things. But they are more afraid of the left-wing degenerate opinions, it seems to me, than the conservative principled ones. And I think that's historically because we suck at boycotts.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting better at it, or it appears that we're getting better at it. But generally speaking, if you ever have a case where there's this sort of conflict where one side is going to get mad, they will always side with the liberal left opinion. And that's probably a combination of two things. One, they are more afraid of them. And two, the people who are in charge of a lot of these places actually agree with those perspectives.
Right. Also, and we can talk maybe more about this later, but the idea that the woke side, a lot of those people, that's their whole identity, so they're going to continue in their cancellation and their opinions, whereas maybe the conservatives are going for like a good day to like stand up for my rights, and then the next day they forget about it because it's not their identity, quote unquote. But I think we're moving more towards conservatives saying, no, this is my identity and I am like a proud straight person. So you have maybe more two identity type mindsets going against each other.
And there's a whole other discussion there about whether that's an appropriate way to, like, we would say that our identity is in Christ. It's not in that I'm a straight person. It's not in that my skin is a certain color. It's not in any, physical characteristics or even mental characteristics outside of my identity is in Christ. And maybe part of that is the reason why we're historically not as good at boycotts, which is interesting, though, because we would say that that's a far more principled stand to say that my identity is in Christ. And so, but when it comes to acting out on our principles, it seems all of us get it.
Yeah.
So for the Planet Fitness case, Jill, you said that you weren't really sure how effective it was. So I went and I looked at Planet Fitness's stock prices.
Yeah.
And you can see, for those that want to do this, if you just Google Planet Fitness stock, And you want to zoom out far enough that you can see like a broad enough time scale.
Yeah.
This is the fun thing about whenever different media outlets display data. The way that you limit your X and Y axes can be very misleading when it comes to trying to interpret data. So for this one, I just zoomed out for a whole year to look at the whole last year of Planet Fitness. And it turns out that, like any fitness company, they go through cycles throughout the year. So they have
January.
a huge January, they have a huge spike, and then it tapers off through the rest of the year, and then it cycles back up in January. So for those who would look at, even for the year to date stock price of Planet Fitness, you're going to see it trending downward, but that's because January to any time during the year is going to see a trend downward. So to say, it's working because of that, that's not a correct thing to say.
Right.
The other thing I would say is you can, if you look specifically at the region of interest, I think it was like March 18-ish is when this happened. You do see a dip that happens after that for a couple of weeks, but we're already climbing back up in the stock price. So to me, that says people have been making a lot of noise about it. Is it actually having an effect? Doesn't seem like it.
I don't know of any alternatives either, because if you go to like Anytime Fitness, all of these big gyms had the same.
Right, yes.
So I don't know if there's anywhere else where people could go, and changing your gym is like a big deal.
It is. And we'll get into the whole idea of like make your own.
Yeah.
Because I have thought this, and I am extremely annoyed and kind of angry because I think that the best thing ever would be a segregated gym. Where you have half the gym for men, half the gym for women, or even it's one gym, but you have like segregated hours. That addresses a whole lot of problems that are associated with other things that aren't specifically this issue.
Yeah.
But that's illegal, and like gay people were suing, a gym tried to do that and they got sued by gay people because there were not equal access to the equipment. So yeah, that's not allowed.
It's not.
So I'm very angry about that because it's not just the owners of the companies, the big companies that exist that are putting policies in place at their own companies that suck at an institutional governmental level that is enforced. And so even if you have principles that you would like to implement differently in your business, you are not permitted to. So that sucks.
Do women-only gyms not exist?
No. And if they did, then I guarantee you as soon as some confused individual found out about it, the first thing they do is go there and try to shut that business down. You think about the Masterpiece Cake place?
Yeah.
There's dozens of bakeries. Go find a different bakery, but that's not the point. The point is they want to ruin you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Rabbit hole, but
Rabbit hole.
I'm kind of mad about it too. Okay.
Cool. So that's Planet Fitness.
It is, yes, and that would be one where I would say, unfortunately, just not a big difference, and that kind of led me to, similarly, you said, obviously we know a lot of these examples, so there's some big ones in the recent years, like there's Target and Pfizer and AT&T and Netflix, all
Disney,
and I think the hard thing is we see this very initial like big spike. So if you take three big ones in 2023 from some of the research I did, were actually Target, Pfizer, and AT&T.
Makes sense.
Between the three of them, it was like over $80 billion in loss over the boycott in an immediate sense, and what equates out to about like 16% of shares for the three businesses like combined. However, like Dylan said, if you look at it over long term, if you look at their stock prices and everything today, if that's what we're going off of, like valuation of a business, obviously, all three of them, like you wouldn't even know.
Right.
Yeah. Know it.
Which is why I don't think that boycotts are an effective way to go about things. I mean, let's just be real. A lot of people said, I'm not going to ever shop at Target again. They didn't shop at Target for 1 week, and the next week they were back. I bet it's a very few number of people who have not stepped foot in a Target from the day that the LGBTQ things were put out until now.
Specifically for Target, though, for those who are not familiar, they had tucking and compression. Is it
underwear?
I don't know. It's the thing where if you've got the parts of the thing that you are and you wish you didn't, but you don't want to cut them off, you wear certain clothing to make it look like you have or don't have said things.
Did they do that for men and women? So obviously
Yeah, packing
man,
on one
and
side,
then
tucking on
Chest
the other.
chest
But
binders.
chest
is for-
binders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but did you guys shop at Target before all that went down?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. Okay, good for you.
We would get groceries there.
We also lived right next to a Target, so
Yeah.
it was very
We
convenient.
would go right up their street and go there.
See, that's a real boycott. So congratulations. I feel like they really lost your business.
Thanks, Heidi.
But that's so few people who actually like stick by their morals that, intensely. And so I feel like they really lost your business, which is awesome.
And they don't care.
Yeah, because they didn't really have my consistent business before then. And so me not going there now is like,
Sure.
who cares?
And that's a good point. So I want to get more into this stuff
Yeah.
as well of
Yeah.
like, is it effective? Should we be doing it? Should we not?
Yeah.
I think we would be remiss though not to mention in the examples, probably what I would consider the largest example of a coordinated boycott and the longest lasting
Mhm.
that I think I've ever seen and probably the world has ever seen. And it will be studied as a case study in business classes for the next 100 years. And that's Bud Light.
Yeah.
Sent some cans around to various trans influencers and talk about not knowing your consumers, like
Yeah.
light beer and sports, like the official sponsor of the NFL, which is a whole additional conversation where we can talk about how we should be boycotting the NFL as well. But we'll focus on Bud Light. Like the type of person that's consuming copious quantities of Bud Light is not going to be like, yes, I think that dude who thinks he's a woman is cool, right? Like that seems like a no-brainer that you ought not do that.
Yeah.
I just love that it's the man's brand that made the biggest impact. I mean, we need more men out here to put their, foot down. They weren't going to do it for Target because they got their wives out here shopping at Target, and the dudes are sitting in the car anyways.
Well, okay, and maybe I can add some additional wording there. Men are more likely to vote with their dollar than women are.
Interesting. And the women are the shoppers. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
And so rather than saying, well, men slacked off on Target and didn't put their foot down.
Right.
To an extent, I agree that the man should be generally leading the principles of the household. But in the case of shopping for stuff, which is most commonly a woman's thing, that would be a case where I would hope, and my wife does come to me and say, hey, I learned this about this company, we're not shopping there anymore. And if most of the time I'm like, great, yes, we're not shopping there anymore, right? Like I'm very on board with that. So maybe that's an encouragement for the women in couples. If you see something like that, help your husband help you make principled stands. But the last note on Bud Light, though, I want to say, I think that most people probably know about it. And if you were to pick something that you thought was a successful boycott, people would say that one was successful. And unfortunately, I have some bad news for you.
Oh, no.
It really didn't make that much of a difference. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I think, or a number, some of it has to do with what we've already discussed of fatigue, boycott fatigue, where people are willing to stick it out for a while, but at some point they're just like, I don't even like, am I never ever going to buy this product ever again because they did one thing 3 years ago that I didn't like? People get tired of it. And the company, this is also in the case of Bud Light, they're a sub brand under Anheuser-Busch, who is a enormous company. And yes, Bud Light is a large portion of what they do, but it's not even close to the majority of what they do.
Yeah.
So even if you totally kill one of their brands, they're going to be totally fine as a company. And so they can just write it out and be like, yeah, we have the longevity to say, great, we're going to be basically giving away Bud Light for the next 3 years, but then people will get tired of it and forget about it, and the cultural moment will move on, and then people will be back to buying our stuff, and we'll be back where we were before. And so if you look at over the last, what did I do for this one? Even just year. So you see that there's this tremendous dip in the share price for Anheuser-Busch, but we're basically back up to the levels that we were at before the boycott started. So
Bud Light is also sort of a unique situation when compared to Target as well, because Target, you walk in and if you see the LGBTQ crap everywhere, you could just literally walk out.
Yeah.
Whereas and it changes, it evolves. During June, all this stuff comes out and then it goes away, and you're kind of consistently reminded of it, at least on an annual basis.
Yeah.
Whereas Bud Light, beer is still beer.
Correct. It's
Yeah.
gross beer. But
It's gross beer, but like the dudes are eventually going to be like, okay, I just kind of want my beer. And
Yep.
not all that they did. I don't think it was a good thing for them to have Dylan Mulvaney as their one of their sponsors.
They kind of are fine.
They kind of are fine because they're just probably not going to do that again. They receive the slap on the wrist. They're going to move on.
Yep.
They kind of, alternatively as well, the hard thing I think that I find similar to the Planet Fitness, the Bud Light, even the Disney, is they are conglomerates of like such huge other brands.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever looked, we've done this a couple times in our house because of the Disney thing. The number of things Disney touches and you just don't even know is actually absurd. The number of things that Anheuser-Busch actually touches is absurd, right? Doritos is not Doritos. It's actually a part of, they are part of Frito-Lay, which is a part of PepsiCo.
Right.
So let's check that one.
Yeah.
And there's just like so many little things left and right that run that way, which I guess sort of leads into the whole like, do you create the parallel economy or this like alternative economy? Do you come up with alternatives, period? Is it even worth it? Because again, these brands are not just the brand that we're talking about. They're actually one of probably, let's say 75 in some cases, like Disney, like 300 other brands. They're like, oh darn, we lost one of our 300 brands. It doesn't even.
It's a bummer. They would rather not. But they're not going to be. They will financially recover from this.
Yeah, they're just gonna put the beer in a different can with a different label.
Yeah.
I mean,
literally.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good segue then to, are these things even worth doing? Like, and this is unfortunately, I think, the cycle that people get on. There's this viral, everybody's on board. We don't like this thing. We're not going to buy it. We're not going to engage in it, whatever. People stick it out. A lot of people get tired and move on with their lives. The few people that do have a principled stand and want to stick it out, look around and are like, guys, don't leave me behind. And then the company recovers and they're like, well, that was a huge waste of my time. That literally had no effect on anything.
Right.
And so that kind of feels like where I'm at in the cycle of these things. Is that an accurate understanding? Is that the like realist perspective of, boy, it doesn't actually do anything? Or is there still value in engaging in these things? What do you guys think?
I think there's value.
Yeah.
I think that it's really hard, though. And I do think that that's the realistic perspective. And like Heidi was saying, a majority of time is what happens, right? Like, oh, you forget you're in Target, but Target is right down the road, so it's super convenient. For the $1-2 thing, is it going to really make that big of a difference? However, I guess from a personal standpoint, I still think that there's value in it. Like because I imagine it to be like a muscle that you have to train.
Okay.
So while it's annoying, and sometimes you're not seeing the difference being made, if I keep working that muscle and I say, okay, this is what we've been convicted of, we believe that this is right, we believe that we should not be supporting businesses that do these things, I feel like we are more aware of brands that do it. We are more readily capable of finding alternatives to those things, or just saying, okay, we know that this one thing might be a little more inconvenient, but we're going to work around that or work it into our schedule so that I do my grocery shopping, so that I avoid a Target or I do something else, right? And so over time, it gets easier. So even though there's fatigue from it, and there's going to be another one, or there's going to be something else that we recognize, that we can be on the lookout for it and hopefully keep sharing that or standing up for those things, that other people that do believe those things can see that the alternative options are possible, or like sticking these things out are possible. So then instead of it just being one household, maybe it does become 2 households, becomes 4 households, and then those 4 households share with them 4 households, etc.
So you would say that the reason to do it is not because you think that you're actually going to financially destroy whatever brand, but it's more of a personal stance of, voting with your dollar a little bit.
Mhm.
But even beyond that,
Yeah.
thinking carefully about to whom you give your money, not because it's necessarily going to make them financially well off or not, but because that is money that God has given to you and you're trying to be a good steward.
Yeah, because we have been convicted of a thing, so why would I live a different way if I am truly convicted of the thing?
Right.
It's that discerning piece. I love that analogy though of muscle to build, right? Because it's a pretty low stakes to be like, I'm gonna drive 10 extra minutes to go to a different store rather than Target. Super low stakes, but at some point it might not be low stakes. And so if you haven't been doing those little things, it's going to be way harder to say no to the thing that you actually have to say no to.
Right.
Case in point, I don't know if we want to go there, but the vaccines and things like that.
Right.
Like way harder to say no to that. But if you're strengthening that muscle and walking by discernment in the targets, you're going to have a better chance at actually sticking it out when it matters.
One other example I think I would bring up, which I think is talking towards this muscle building component, is NFL. And so I briefly mentioned this.
Yep.
And I think I would summarize the perspective I'm trying to capture here is that it seems to me that the success of various boycotts is associated with how much people care about the issue versus how much they care about the thing being boycotted.
Right.
So the NFL
kind of on the motivator.
Yeah, the NFL has very, very loyal fans. Like football is like a part of people's identity, I would say, in the way that they associate with sports teams. And so for those type of people, even if they would claim to be a conservative, you're going to be hard pressed to convince them to give up something that's that much of their identity, even if they would say, well, I don't agree with BLM, and I think it's stupid that they're all kneeling for the anthem, and why do we have a black national anthem? We have one country, that's ridiculous. And why are all of the athletes wearing rainbow shoelaces, and why is the end zone painted in rainbows, right? They will look past that because they care more about watching their football than they do about taking a principled stand.
It's one of those things too where like the purpose of boycotting, I guess, in general is to make an impact in the large organization. But at the end of the day, the large organization we're seeing isn't going to be impacted. So at some point you have to recognize that this action is actually me not going to Target. Like they literally could care less if I don't go to Target.
Correct.
But it's more about our own refining.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so that makes the decision to actually do these things a lot easier because you're going to see a difference in yourself. You're probably not going to see a difference in Target.
And potentially it would help with some of that feeling of hopelessness of if your motivation for participating is because you think it's going to ruin the company and then it doesn't, you're going to be a lot less excited to participate in the next one.
In fact, you're going to be disappointed at this point
basically
100%
every
of
time.
the time.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
And so instead, if your perspective is I'm doing this to improve myself and my family in our principles, that's actually a really good point, and I like that.
I mean, it's a practice of discipline at that point.
It is. Wow, I'm all for boycotting for the individual purpose reasons. Yeah.
So I guess it would be good too to think about, in addition to betterment of yourself and your family, does the Bible say anything specific about this? And is there some guidance that we can draw from Scripture, which is what we do here on Ember Exchange. We like to go to Scripture for things that might otherwise not seem like Scripture issues necessarily. So what do you guys have in that space?
I mean, the word boycott is not in the Bible, which
right, because it was invented in 1880 boycott.
Right. So we're going off of biblical principles here. It's another one of those things that's not specific. There's not a specific verse, but we can certainly glean a lot from the Bible and how we live our lives. So Ephesians 5 verse 11 says, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness. And James 4 verse 4 says, friendship with the world is enmity with God. And so many Christians, when they do boycott things, these are the types of principles that they're going, under or after, because we're trying to set ourselves apart from the world. And so if the world is screaming LGBTQ, we have to in some way take a stance against that and not participate in that sin. Or support it. In particular with those more like sexual sins, 1 Corinthians 5 verses 9 and 10 literally says, I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people, not at all meaning the sexual immoral of the world, or the greedy and the swindlers or idolaters, since then you would need to get out of the world. So Paul said that if a professing Christian and a member of the church was living sinfully and he was excommunicated, you ought not associate with him. So like he's very strict about those things. But at the same time, it can get tricky because like we're not supposed to associate with that one individual person. It doesn't mean we don't associate with the world at whole.
Right.
So like, for example, with the baker who wouldn't bake the wedding cake for a gay couple, not baking a wedding cake for a gay person, or not baking a cake for a gay person because it was their birthday, would probably be the wrong thing to do, right?
Unless it's my gay birthday, celebrate being gay and getting older with me, and then had two dudes kissing on the cake. That would be a cake that I think would be okay not to make.
Right. But if it's generally just a person coming into the shop, you know they're gay and it's their birthday, great, bake the cake. But like, if it's specifically for a wedding, there is a difference there in advocating for the sin versus like participating with the world and showing love. So you're not necessarily obligated to boycott the company necessarily. Romans 14 teaches that when it comes to these gray areas, we must always act so that we are convicted of our own mind. So if it violates our conscience to buy something at a place that advocates for LGBTQ, then it would be a sin for us to do.
Right. Which kind of goes back to that whole self-discipline and like what are you convicted of standpoint that we were talking about latest. I think that the maybe few that I saw that related the most would have been Matthew 12:30, where it's whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. So, like, people supporting these things that we know that we're convicted of are obviously against the Lord, and we are not supposed to stand with them.
Right.
In addition to, it was Matthew 6:4, which also actually kind of talks about money as well. But no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money, which then kind of bleeds into Luke 16:12. So if you have not been faithful with worldly wealth, who will entrust you with the true riches? And so that idea of being good stewards of our wealth that we've been given here on earth, right? And making sure that we are voting with our dollar and not using our money towards them. And why wouldn't we do that?
The analogy I would pull is when Paul is talking about, we actually brought this up in the alcohol episode a little bit, meat sacrificed to idols. But the piece I'm going to tease out here is particularly in 1 Corinthians 10. I'll start in verse 25. He is saying, eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. If an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat whatever is put before you without raising questions of conscience. But if someone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. I'm referring to the other person's conscience, not to yours. For why is my freedom being judged by another's conscience? So to me, that sounds like, for example, if you, this is a very dumb, contrived example. If somebody gave you a gift that was purchased at Target, then you wouldn't be obligated to say, no, I shall not accept this gift that was purchased at Target. But if they come to you and say, hey, I purchased this gift at Target, implying that, hey, I bought this because I'm trying to support the messages, or it's the same idea of the company taking a principle stand
Right.
that is independent of the product that they're selling. That's them equivalently announcing this meat has been sacrificed to idols. And then that's when it's important to abstain. So potentially then the additional note on there is we don't need to go like out searching for companies and trying to find the private lives of whoever owns the company to say, we should definitely not buy from this company if they're keeping that to themselves. But if they want to make a public stance of that, then that's where potentially we would say that is the parallel to the meat. So.
Yeah.
Which I think all of at least the big examples we've shown obviously are trying to make statements in opposition to what we would believe is right and true and good and unbiblical, in which case we want to try to abstain as when and where we can.
Yeah. I think a lot of us as Christians probably would say boycotting is a good thing to do, whether it's an actual sin issue, like are you sinning by walking into Target and buying your sour cream there? I don't know. I think it is a matter of conviction. If you're actively going against your conviction, then it would be sin. If you're kind of in the middle about it, I don't know if God would consider that a quote unquote sin.
We're also not the arbiters of sin.
We are not. We are not. But you have to kind of discern that for yourself. But we like are also not in charge of an organization's treasury, right? Like we're not responsible for how they spend their money. If they are actively saying like, yes, we support these sins, then it's our duty to not shop there. But if they don't actively say and we don't actively know, I don't think that we have to dig in and be like, what's every line item?
Right.
Yeah.
So as a point of segue, so I think that it's always helpful to go back to scripture for things. In terms of what do we do about it, because there's boycotting is one thing, but you still need sour cream, right?
Yeah.
Make your own.
So that's actually where I'm going with this. So a lot of times people will say, this often comes up in like, for example, social media. If social media platform sucks, everyone's like, oh, we'll just go make your own.
Yeah.
Is that always the solution, to go make your own? And what this ties into, and I don't think that I have the expertise, nor do we have the time to go into the entire depths of the idea of parallel economy, but that's something that comes up when you talk about these issues is, does there need to be two of everything, a liberal one and a conservative one, and you go to the one that is associated with your beliefs? Is that a good thing to do as a believer, to say, I see this space where the options are very limited for people who share my belief system, I'm going to make an alternative? And then can you do that badly? And I think that the answer is yes, you can do it badly. But I'm curious what you guys have seen in that, and how you feel about it when you see somebody that's like, we're the conservative Target, or we're the conservative NFL, if that's a thing, but you get the idea.
I kind of flip a coin on this one, honestly. Sometimes I'm kind of gung-ho about do the alternative and like go that direction. But then sometimes I end up feeling like, as a Christian conservative, also, we are supposed to be examples in the world of what should be right and what we should be doing. And when you just are like, I'm going to create this alternative, and then we just kind of become an echo chamber over here of like our own thing, and then the liberals are an echo chamber of their own thing over here with no truth or life literally being spoken into that. Is it that much better then?
I struggle with the echo chamber argument, because I don't, as we discussed in the DEI episode, I don't care what the transgender Catman has to say.
Right.
And so I don't need his contribution in whatever I'm doing.
And I guess it's
I don't care if he goes and talks to all of his other cat friends.
Right, they're meowing over here. Yeah, I don't either. I guess I'm not saying so much that I don't. No, truly, I don't care what they're saying, but I do think that we have value to add to that. I mean,
sure.
Distinctly, we do have value to add to that. We have truth and we have life, and none of which they have.
Exactly.
And so, anyway, like I said, it's flip a coin. It depends on the day for me. A lot of times I'm like, yeah, like I just, because there's also the point of like we need to be in community, and God gave us other believers to be around and surrounded by to help strengthen us up, because we do need that in this world. We can't just go at it alone. We were not created to do that. And so being in that space where it is right, Christian conservatives that believe the same values and hold to the same convictions as you can be encouraging. It can help build those muscles a lot faster oftentimes as well when you're doing them in community. And so that part of it is great. But then I'm like, but now they're over here in this big dark black hole, and it's really sad. And the only way they're going to get out of it is if we bring the light into that. So don't we kind of have to be in it a little bit?
Yeah, I think we do. As Christians,
right.
I think if you're looking at it purely at a political conservative versus liberal, then like, yeah, it makes total sense. Be in our own echo chambers. Who cares?
Right.
Like, we don't care about what the liberals have to say. But as Christian conservatives, we don't care about necessarily what they're saying, but we do care about them as people. And so therefore you have to like acknowledge them. We can't be in our own echo chambers.
Right.
I mean, Jesus tells
less
us to make
about
disciples.
that, but even less about them as people, honestly, but more so like, yeah, what is their standpoints in salvation?
Yeah, we care about their souls. And so Jesus tells us to make disciples of all nations. It kind of seems like America is becoming two separate, quote unquote, nations in a way. And so we have to care about the other side that doesn't know the truth. And it's hard as Christians because there are some parts of the conservative world that like I don't agree with either.
Yeah.
And so I don't really land in either one of the, I mean, I'm much more conservative than I am liberal, but I'm firstly and foremostly a Christian. And so I don't want it to end up just being bucketed into this whole conservative world because I totally disagree with the liberals. Like, if everybody had to shop at a place that they agree with, everyone would have to be their own shop. So we should just go back to households being their own shops. But that's a whole different conversation.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. My contribution to this is going to be in the space that somebody does want to make an alternative. It should be a quality thing that isn't intended to take advantage of the fact that they are the conservative alternative.
Right.
So I'm going to call out the Daily Wire on this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they've done some things well. They're going through some stuff now that I'm not going to comment on because it's
outside of
this
that
conversation. But one of the things that has bothered me about the way that they do things is that they'll take one of these boycott fads and then make an alternative, but make it prohibitively expensive to be a real alternative. So the example I'll use is Hershey's, for example, started getting in on the old LGBT thing there for a while. And so as a counter to that, they made Jeremy's chocolates, which were the him and her bars. Him had nuts, hers did not, which is hilarious and fantastic marketing. But it was like a $15 candy bar.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's not, you're not making a competitor.
You can go to the gas station and get a Hershey's bar for $1. That doesn't become a competitor anymore.
And so to say, well, we're making the alternative, you're taking advantage of the fact that people's convictions where they're like, well, I don't want to spend my money on Hershey's. So I guess if I want to support the alternative, I got to support this other thing. But it's 15 times more expensive, and you're taking advantage then of that emotional piece in people. Right. And so I think that's an inappropriate way to do it. If you're going to make a conservative alternative, you should make it legitimately an alternative, not its own like fad thing.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because in an alternative like that, if it were truly an alternative, I'd be game with putting out a Halloween basket even for non-believers that are going to come by my doorstep at Halloween, and I'm going to have a whole basket of his and hers with and without nuts. And that could actually maybe make a statement. Yeah. Because all of a sudden it's something that's totally different that they're not going to get at any other house. Mm-hmm. And it makes a point. I can't do that at $15 a bar. I can get an entire bag of Hershey's variety pack that has 75 mini candy bars in it for $15, right? Like, it's just not even realistic.
And then the follow-up argument of, oh, well, you must just not care about the cause then if you're not willing to pay for it. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the Daily Wire in many ways, but like with everything, it has its faults. My example was Jeremy's razors.
Yeah.
Same idea.
Same idea.
I don't know the price point on that necessarily, but I was watching their YouTube like commercial. It's funny in some ways.
Downright scandalous, the imagery. There's like homoerotic stuff and scantily clad women, which is not appropriate. But additionally,
what did I find? I found a quote in there that said, Harry's Razors hates you. So Harry's Razors and Gillette are the two companies that they're going against.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, do we need to say that a company hates another, like, or hates you? I feel like it's just more divisive than it is like, hey, here's a great alternative if you don't agree with their morals and values. I don't know that we have to make it so like, if you buy Harry's, you hate us. Like, I think that's a recipe
playing
for
into the emotional component of it without the rational decision behind it.
Which we should be rationally making our decisions.
I agree. I don't disagree that I think probably the liberal idiots in charge of places like Harry's do hate conservative Christians, and they would like nothing more for them to crash and burn.
Probably, but it's a product at the end of the day. It's a freaking razor. Like,
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So there is a wrong way to make your own, I think is what we're saying. So you have to be conscious about if that is the approach you want to take, you have to do it well and in a way that actually makes sense and isn't trying to take advantage of people's emotions.
Accessible.
Yeah. And I think as far as the taking advantage of people's emotions, want a couple other like alternatives, or like one of the creators of these alternatives referred to it as like the patriot economy. That was like the creator of like Public Square, and then there's Rumble as well. And I think that a few of those are alternatives that have maybe done a better job. Unfortunately, not as popular and maybe still growing in popularity, but they're actual just like alternatives to the thing, right? They aren't prohibitive in cost. They're not using weird imagery that still is inappropriate, but trying to attract customers. They aren't using maybe sort of out of place language in their marketing to just like raise weird emotions about things, right? Like Rumble is intended to just be like a YouTube alternative. Like that's it, and that's what it is. Public Square is an app that just helps bring to light other brand alternatives that are maybe selling things at an actual competitive cost, or are American made, or support veterans, or don't support LGBTQ things specifically. And they just give you the opportunity to have easier access to them and finding them all in one place. Because obviously with our phones, everything has an app and everything is easy to use, and you can Google anything and find it, but Google's always going to give you the top searches of things like the Targets and the Amazons and the of the world. Right. And so instead, Public Square is just an app that you can have on your phone that's going to give you an alternative to that exact thing. And you can search it. Also, it can be like filtered by what kind of product you're looking for.
That's cool.
So if you're like, oh, I specifically want an alternative health and beauty that is not Procter & Gamble, that just like owns the world. Oh, here's 5. And then it tells you what they support and what they have on their website.
To be included on Public Square, I think that the company has to sign some sort of statement that says we don't agree with these things, we do agree with these.
Correct.
Things.
Awesome.
So, I mean, there are alternatives like that do try to make things easier for you to maybe work these muscles or decide that those are your convictions and find them with a little bit of convenience combined.
Yeah. And then obviously finding people that you love and trust or enjoy listening to on podcasts or YouTube. And as annoying as the like commercials sometimes are, it's like, okay, I respect that person.
Yeah, if they're choosing advertisers that reflect their own values, that can be a great way to find products.
Yeah. I mean, there's like great diaper companies that I found out about. Not that I need diapers, but I'm like, oh, like I probably won't be buying Huggies. I'll buy this other diaper company. Like, yeah, it's cool.
So in that sentiment, we are kind of making this a 2-part episode also, but in the spirit of talking about brands that we would recommend as alternatives and whose values I think we're fans of, the second half of this is going to be, we've each brought a brand that we would like to share with each other and also with the Embers that we think is really cool. So that will be coming right up. Okay, we're back for the second half. Not to disappoint anyone, Jill, I know will be the most sad about this, but we will not be having a Mortal Spirits this episode.
Oh,
Yeah.
so cute, boo.
Okay, I kind of like the Mortal Spirits, but I know you as listeners do. We likely will bring it back.
Yeah, that's not. We're not killing Mortal Spirits. So we did. If you didn't notice, we got through 10 episodes, and we wanted to kind of set a rhythm, and Mortal Spirits was a part of that rhythm. But now that we've gotten this far, we'd kind of like to branch out into some different optional interlude segments.
Yeah.
So, in conjunction with talking about boycotting and brands and those sorts of things, one of the potential interlude segments that we had thought about is a stuff we like segment. And we didn't really know how to tie it in, but this seems like a decent way to tie it in as kind of a first instance of stuff we like. And that's not to say this is the segment where we are going to advertise to people who pay us. At least certainly not right now. We are, again, not sponsored by any of these. We just actually like these brands and we think they're cool. And I appreciate it if I'm listening to podcasts and stuff. If somebody that I like or a show that I like says, I really like this thing, it's something that I enjoy and I like the values behind it. That's a cool thing for me because I'm always looking for new brands to get excited about.
Yeah.
So if that's something that you enjoy, this is a space for this episode where we're going to just talk about a few brands that we like and why we like them. So we each have brought a different brand and or product, and then we're going to talk a little bit about them individually. And I'm not going to start.
I mean, I can go first because
go for it.
I'm going to be a disappointment. So, yes.
You're not a disappointment.
Sorry. I mean, my brand might be a slight disappointment.
Okay.
I'm really excited about my brand. However, they unfortunately closed. So I apologize, Embers, ahead of time. Yes, we're going to share brands, and I will share one in the future that still exists today, but this is not one that you can probably get anymore.
Okay.
But mine is called Jackson Jovi. So they started, and Jackson Jovi, apparel, but specifically jeans, was what they did. So I have a pair here.
Can you spell Jackson Jovi?
Yes. Jackson Jovi is Jaxon space Jovi Jovie.
Okay.
So I have a pair here. I'm wearing a pair. My husband has a couple, I think, as well.
Yeah, they're very comfortable jeans.
Yes. And then I'm also wearing one of their shirts. So to give you a little background on Jackson Jovi and then also how we found them, it's kind of a fun thing. So Jackson Jovi started their journey to become a business in 2016, and it wasn't until about late 2017, early 2018 when they started actually doing like limited releases on their stuff. So they actually started the brand under the name The Stronger Jean Company. They believed that, strong functional clothing was kind of a stance of building. They wanted to help with their business build a strong community because a strong community builds strong people and strong people build strong families. And what do strong families need? They need clothing that's going to stand up to what those people are doing. So that was where they kind of started. They then had to transition into a name change just due to, just like the business journey in general. And they changed it to Frankly because they wanted to be very frank with their customers. So they kind of had this like video blog going on, and then they had, their Instagram and all the social media things going on as well. And they wanted to kind of share this whole journey with those that were buying from them. It was just a couple, like a local couple that was kind of starting this. And then fast forward a few more years, they kind of made one more final name change, and that was to Jackson Jovi. And that was because at the time they had two dogs, and one of them's name was Jackson, and the other dog's name was Jovi. So
Nice.
that is where they came from. We literally met them face to face. So we ran into them at the CrossFit Games. And at that event, there are a lot of vendors. And Jackson Jovi was one of them one year. And the jeans are not only functional and strong and durable, but they're actually like kind of stretchy and super comfortable. And again, building strong people includes working out, and CrossFit coined themselves as the like strongest man alive like competition thing. So they were there.
Nice.
And we met them and we got to try on some of their jeans in person. And at the time they were still doing the limited release. So they didn't even have them available there. They had like one of every size of jeans that they were going to be making.
Yeah.
So you could try them on, and then you had to order them. And that would have been in the summer. So it was like 3 or 4 months. We had to wait for our first set of Jackson Jovi jeans. And these ones in particular, actually on the table, I believe, are the first pair I bought. And that was over 5 years ago.
Oh, no, so, brand new.
Yeah,
they're great.
They're very comfortable.
Yes.
I don't know, as somebody who enjoys lifting, a lot of jeans are not cut for people with lifters' legs. So
yes. So
they make them stretchy in the right places, and so you can go through your full range of motion.
Right. So they were very successful in that, and we were really excited to meet them and buy their jeans. Unfortunately, they went a different direction with the business in general, so they do not sell jeans anymore.
Cool. Well, thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Jeans, small family business sort of thing that makes
Yes.
high quality product. Not necessarily, that one's like not a political stance for any reason, but just like they made a good product.
They did.
Cool.
And yes, also probably a little more expensive than just like your normal Levi's jeans that you can just get a dime a dozen at Farm and Fleet or whatever.
Right.
But again, like I said, I've had these now since 2018. So
Yep.
There you go.
Love it.
All right. Thanks, Jill. Heidi, would you like to go next?
Sure, I can go next.
Okay.
All right. So I have an empty bottle here for all of you listening only Embers. And this little empty plastic bottle has on it clean juice. And I drank all of the juice that was in the bottle, hence why it is empty. This one is their green juice. So Clean Juice is the name of the company. This is their green juice. It's cold pressed cucumber, celery, fennel, spinach, lemon, and ginger juice.
that's healthy.
It is healthy. So I love organic juices and all things health and wellness. And it is really difficult when you're on the go to find a place that you can stop for like a really good quality quick bite to eat, or even just a smoothie or some juice. And so I was out to lunch with one of my friends in Oconomowoc the other week, and we were like, oh my goodness, there's a juice bar, let's stop in. And so that's where I became familiar with Clean Juice, and I was very impressed by them because nearly everything in their shop is organic, which is just awesome for my organic Embers. And then also I loved that they are very obviously rooted in scripture. They had on a lot of their like smoothie cups, they have a Bible passage, which I think is really cool. And they are rooted in the healthy body and strong spirit scripture, which is 3 John 1 verse 2, because we're supposed to have healthy bodies and strong spirits. And they offer cold pressed, fresh, and bottled juices, smoothies, wraps, sandwiches, acai bowls, toast, salads, and other healthy foods. And then I did some research on their website just about their values.
And it's not available necessarily just like in your average grocery store?
Not yet.
Okay, but the plan, I mean, it seems like they're bottling it such that it would be.
Yes, so their cold presses are bottled this way, but then they also have like the freshly pressed juice, and that you're supposed to drink within, I believe it's 48 hours. And then these bottled ones you can, have in your fridge up to like 3 days. But their values are legitimately faith-based values. So it says, our doors are open to all walks of life, regardless of religion, race, or lifestyle. At the same time, we are a faith-based organization where our founders and many of our store owners and team members share traditional Christian values. And so they have 10 values here, and they have scripture references with each one of the values. And so, as much as I love conservative organizations, and a lot of times my values do inherently align with that, it's nice to have an organization that's like actually just Christian, not conservative necessarily. And like, are they expensive? Yeah, but if you're gonna buy high quality ingredients, it's going to be expensive, whether it's a high quality organization or not. And I would much rather support Clean Juice than something like the Naked Juices, because they're owned by like Nestle, I believe. And I know I'm just getting a high quality product from a high quality place.
There you go.
Yeah.
Clean Juice. Okay, my turn?
Your turn.
Yeah. Great. Okay, well, I've got some coffee, which I definitely didn't just do a sneaky cut there to make it appear out of nowhere and be hot. Jill doesn't like coffee, so again, I'm bringing you a drink that you don't like and forcing you to drink it on camera. It's also pretty hot, so be careful. And it also doesn't have any sugar or cream in it. But anyway, so the coffee brand that I am going to stand for today is not what everyone thinks of when they think of conservative coffee company.
Okay.
And the reason that I'm a fan of this coffee company is because I used to be a fan of the other conservative coffee company. So if you're like, what is conservative coffee company, then I'm very sorry. But a lot of people probably thought, oh, he's going to bring Black Rifle Coffee.
Oh, okay.
Which is a big company. I think they're out of Utah, ? Or they're in Utah. They've got several locations. And they make a lot of money being the veteran-owned, gun shooting, conservative coffee company for conservatives.
Yep.
And then I found out that some of their employees donated to liberal campaigns, and their owner has been reported to have engaged in sexual harassment with another male employee.
Oh, yeah, that's not
very awkward ways. And there are the Black Rifle people out there going to be like, you're the worst, and you are repeating salacious lies, and that was all covered in a lawsuit, and it was all a joke. And it's like, okay, but if you're using very explicit homosexual language with a subordinate in a closed office, regardless of whether it was a joke, and you guys are now friends and have moved past it, I don't think that's the sort of company that I really want to support the values of.
Right.
Anyway, so in discovering the things about Black Rifle that I was a huge fan of, I also discovered Stocking Mill Coffee Company, which is the brand that I'm going to be talking about today. I think their probably best advertising comes either from word of mouth, like people like me telling other people that they should stop drinking Black Rifle and drink Stocking Mill instead, but also they are very present on Twitter in a very entertaining way, I would say.
Okay.
Unfiltered would be the word that I would use to describe the sorts of things that they like to say. They are unabashedly Christian. They are very pro-life, very pro-Second Amendment, very pro-freedom, very anti the opposite of all those things. So I will say, if you go check them out on Twitter, which you should do if you want a good laugh, or want to participate in some public shaming of idiots, that's what it is. There's a lot of strong language. There's also like some very intense name calling of dumb people.
So not for the faint of heart.
Yes, if that's not something that you enjoy and you don't think that's hilarious when a liberal gets called a fat horse apple on Twitter, then you should probably, this isn't going to be for you. But I find it hilarious, and I really like the people that run it. It's like 3 dudes. They're out of Daytona Beach, Florida. They have a ton of customers, mostly online. The other reason that people don't like them is that because it's a small operation and they have so many customers, like you might order your coffee and not get it for like a month.
Oh.
Which is, it isn't to say that they roast it and then it sits in the package for 3 months. It's just that they are a month behind on all of the orders that they have to roast, and they don't have enough bandwidth to actually make all that coffee. So when you get your coffee, it is fresh, but it might not come next week like other places. And anyway.
Makes sense.
Yes. So the reason that they're called Stocking Mill Coffee Company is they are named after the Stocking Gunpowder Mill from the Revolutionary War. A lot of their stuff is Revolutionary War brand themed. Neither of the bags I brought today to show are that, but most of them are. But there's a guy named George Stocking and his 4 sons. They operated a gunpowder mill. There was an accident that caused it to explode, killing George Stocking and 3 of his 4 sons. But his wife Eunice, after the death of her husband and sons, got some financial help, rebuilt the mill, and continued supplying gunpowder for the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War after her husband's death. And so, in honor of her and the gunpowder factory, that is what they named this after.
Yes, I think the first bag that I remember showing up to the house was the one called Wig Splitter.
Yes, so my favorite blend of their like standard blend, they have quite a number of offerings. My favorite one is the Wig Splitter, and it's got a Continental Army soldier wielding a tomahawk. And the idea being that you're going to split the wigs of the king supporting, Englishmen. So anyway, I'm a huge fan. If the coffee is cooled down enough that you would like to sip it, go for it. This one that you're tasting is a part of a new line of coffees. So most of their stuff, like I said, is Revolutionary War themed. They are starting a new line of coffees that is supposed to be, they say it's dedicated to spreading God's word. So they call it the Sling and Stone line. And then this is the one coffee that's currently in that line called Risen. And then they
I like it.
put a verse on the back.
Coffee just tastes, what does coffee taste?
Coffee.
Yeah.
But the verse on the back is Matthew 10:34, which says, "I came not to send peace, but a sword." So that's kind of also in line with there.
Edgy.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you enjoy all of these things. I probably will not be participating in their Twitter life.
That's acceptable. And if that's not your thing, then do not. But if it is your thing, I find it very entertaining and fun.
Yeah.
So would recommend.
It's like more pleasant than whiskeys, but still like.
I don't think it has that strong of a coffee taste.
Yeah, this one's pretty mild.
Yeah.
I would say. The one last thing I'll note is that they have some excellent flavored coffees. In some places, it's like, flavored coffees, what sort of chemicals are they putting on it? All of their flavored coffees are organic flavoring. Okay, and they have the best flavoring ever. I just ordered a couple bags, so they're not here yet, but I ordered a key lime pie flavored one and a s'mores flavored one.
Wait,
I am a sucker for all things
and they
s'mores.
taste really good. So.
But I do make a lot of the coffee in the house, even though I don't drink it. So I'll at least enjoy the smell. Because I do enjoy the smell of like the grounds and the coffee brewing in the morning. I just don't like the taste of the coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it is actually pretty late in the day, so I did sit.
Yeah, you don't have to drink all of it. That's totally fine. Thank you for trying it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the brand that I talked about.
Cool.
Thanks, guys. That was fun.
Yeah.
Are we gonna call it stuff we like? Things we like?
Stuff we like.
Stuff we like. So this might be another segment if people enjoy hearing about stuff we like. We might bring more stuff we like in the future.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Embers, for joining us on today's episode. I had a fun time talking with you guys about boycotts.
Yeah.
I think that, I sometimes just end up in a space where I'm like, it's so tiring. Everything is so tiring.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's a good conversation to have, so thanks for going there with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for listening today. And if you're hearing this, you probably found us on one of the major platforms, but we're on all of them: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube as well, if you want to watch some of our reactions, more specifically maybe during Mortal Spirits. But we would love to get your honest review and 5 stars if you're enjoying it, and please share with others, because there is only one way for this fire to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. We often do have short form content, so we're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those types of things.
Yeah.
So please feel free to share us on your stories or repost us, retweet us. We would love that.
Yeah, we would.
All right. Burn bright, Embers.